Pie and Smith production. We're making our YouTube debut. We're here today to talk about everything darts with a bit of a betting angle. I'm Adam Smido-Smith. That is Matt Pieman Hill. And yeah, basically anything could happen. It's the first time we're giving this a try. And I'll pass you over to Mr. Pieman himself.
Thanks, Adam. Pleasure to be here. I feel like I'm terribly prepared for this, but just want to, dive in at the deep end for all 10 viewers. I'm sure my mum will enjoy it, if no one else, So we'll, looking forward to it. I feel like I've watched an obscene amount of darts over the last few months, so be good to get it all off my chest, and not just send you a string of WhatsApp voice notes about it. Let's get it out there for the public, for the people.
Yeah, I think that's what it's born out of, really. We all know the issues what 2020 has brought us, but darts is one of the few sports that we both agree on has really capitalised is probably the wrong word, but has pushed on and done much better than other sports. And there's been a lot of the 2020 dart season has been crammed into the last few weeks. I've been watching plenty. You've been watching even more. So yeah, we're going to give it a go. Just before we do that, I wondered if we could give all 19 of my YouTube subscribers. This is where it will be
19 more than me.
Published. If we could give them a bit of a background of what you get up to and what's your route into darts and other sports, really.
Certainly, yeah. I'm Cumbrian originally. Did a journalism degree in Preston at the University of Lancashire with the idea of getting into sports journalism. Realised about halfway through my degree that the pay was terrible, but I was kind of in too deep to turn around. Long story short, wound up at Betfred, worked there, doing a bit of sports writing for about 2.5, 3 years. In that period, met a girl from Kent in Tenerife, had to direct myself to the south of the country. Now based in Kent, which is somewhere I'd never been until I literally moved here 2 years ago. Took a slight diversion out of the sports industry, and I'm now back in writing sport for LiveScore, the Scores website. So yeah, generally bit of a sports nut, bit of a loser. Used to be quite a frequent punter, not as much these days, but still like to think I'm dialed in with what's going on. And in terms of sports, football's my bread and butter, but more and more darts is becoming the dominant one that I watch more than anything. As you touched on there, I think darts has just grown phenomenally quickly. And even in COVID, they seem to have managed to continue the growth, with the home tour and a lot of YouTube darts going on. The events have continued. The TV product is as good as it was with fans, if not better, to be honest. So watching a hell of a lot of darts. I also watch snooker, golf, tennis, cricket, anything that's on, really. So, yeah, I've got a lot of opinions and none of them particularly well respected.
Yeah, I'm a little bit similar to you in terms of leaving college all those years ago, not really knowing what I'm going to do. Like sport, was okay at business studies as a subject, landed in sport marketing, and that was just the time really when the sport marketing as a degree was starting, and Coventry Uni was one of the first to do it. Now they're 10 a penny because every lad that loves sport, like me and you, similar to sports journalism, they're 10 a penny. And
my degree is absolutely worthless. Yeah.
Started lucky enough to get on a placement with the British Horse Racing Authority at what was then the Tote for 10 weeks, and within a nutshell, that 10-week placement, I'm still doing that job pretty much. Similar to you, relocated originally from Nottingham, living in Wigan. Next thing you know, I've been here 10 years, got a mortgage, a wife, and one and a half kids. So that's where we are there. Darts, well, our paths crossed at Betfred, as you mentioned, and there was even the well vaunted Betfred Darts League that was taken way too seriously by a small handful of young lads at Betfred. Yeah, where we had leagues and stats and head-to-heads and percentages and bonus points and all sorts. So yeah, that's where the darts angle came from. Originally a football orientated sports fan, season ticket holder at Forest went in my teenage years, but having moved to Wigan and fully embraced Wigan life, I'm now a full convert to rugby league and pay very little attention to football. But yeah, darts and horse racing, etc., similar to you, a wide range. So that's enough of us. hopefully people are still with us. So just with the darts, just looking back, like I say, as mentioned, with the COVID restrictions, etc., and lockdowns, a lot of the dart season has been crammed into a pretty short period of time. Starting with the Grand Prix, I'll let you know my thoughts first. I thought Gerwyn Price took this competition at a canter, to be honest. The Grand Prix, for those that don't know, is the double in, double out format in sets. I thought Gerwyn Price won it pretty well. It was probably at the height of Michael van Gerwen's dip in form. He took full advantage of that. Looked the winner from game one. To my eye, won 4 of his 5 games by two clear sets at least. So he was dominating games, including the final, which never looked in doubt, winning 5-2. He just looked dialed in for me. He just looked dialed into his game. He was his first start. I think Wayne Mardle calls them first start merchants. Price wouldn't necessarily 100% fit into that category, but it's certainly helpful. And his first start was bang on. He looked confident on the doubles throughout. Really did look on top of his game, and that's when I personally decided to back him for the Worlds at around 11-2. We'll come back to that decision of mine in a little while. And then the only other take really from that tournament for me was Dirk van Dijvenbode. I knew I'd get that name wrong, but absolutely burst onto the scene. I'd never heard of him, and I watch a lot of TV darts, and I'd never heard of him. And he made the final 250 to one shot. Big Dutchman, pretty aggressive, throws a load of 180s. Made it to the final, but
bit of happy hardcore entrance music as well.
Right up there.
Earring. So got it all on his dirt, really.
That was my take on it, and it was the season kind of reopened, if you like, after lockdown with a bang, and see what you thought.
I agree with a lot of what you said there. I thought Gerwyn Price was excellent throughout the tournament. Like you said, never really looked in doubt. Good place to start with any darts tournament these days is Price and MVG, and at this time, MVG, as you quite rightly point out, was suffering a little bit of a dip. Price, very much bullish, came out. He did have a few strange comments at the start of the tournament. He was talking about whether he was contemplating going back to see his family in between days. You may remember at the end of the tournament, he had an interview with his daughters on the screen behind him, talking about how important his family had been to him through lockdown and stuff. And it seemed to be a really rejuvenated, focused, I think you used dialed in Gerwyn Price. Very impressive. The only time I thought he was in a little bit of bother was when he played Dave Chisnell, who it must be said was absolutely fantastic in this tournament. If anyone did look like the winner other than Price, it probably was Chizzy. They met in an absolutely classic semi-final where it went down to the last set. Chizzy kind of had his chance and didn't take it. It's kind of the story of Dave Chisnell's career. You wonder whether he's ever going to win a TV title. He's definitely got the game for it. His power scoring is obscene. Even he can go with the best 180 for 180 when he's in.
Didn't he chuck a 121 average or something in the Winter Series? Something ridiculous. I mean, sorry to interrupt you there, but my only thinking on Chisnell at the moment, his I don't even know what you would call it, his action where he goes from right to left and it looks like he's throwing a dart across his face or across his body. That's become more prevalent for me recently. I don't know, maybe I've not seen him for a while, but when I've seen him in the Grand Slam, it looked more wild.
I think Chizzy is one of these players that you would never teach anyone to throw a dart how he throws it. He's very unnatural and not the most aesthetically pleasing player to watch. But it seems to work for him. I know what you mean. He sometimes looks like he's forcing the dart and he's very jerky in his motion, but he does look like he's got quite high confidence at the moment, quite comfortable with where his game's at. I just think sometimes, when you've lost these big games so many times, it becomes a little bit of a mental problem. And I do think in that Price game, he realised if I can beat Price here, I'm going to be favourite in the final. It's a great opportunity for me. All these thoughts start coming into his head, and you can almost, it can be quite painful to watch. You're willing him not to lose it, but he inevitably kind of does. I wouldn't be surprised if Chizzy puts a big run together at the Worlds. All the signs are that his game's in good nick, but not convinced that he's the man you want to be with. But as I say, really only positives to take from it really for Chizzy. Price was excellent. Van Dijvenbode you touched on obviously, but what a way to announce yourself in the darting world. He put in some decent performances off stage, but nothing like that. He was really, he did it the hard way as well. He did not have an easy run. He beat Mensur Suljovic, he beat Dimitri, he beat Gary Anderson, he beat Whitlock. It was a really, really impressive run. Even in the final, I know he lost 5-2, but he went 2-0 down, 3-0 down quite early, and he managed to come back. He had a chance to get level, which he didn't take, and Price kind of pulled away. But you wondered whether it was going to be a flash in the pan. We've seen in more recent tournaments that it's not a flash in the pan. He's actually really seems to have taken his game to the next level, and definitely one to keep an eye on at the Ali Pali, I think. One other player I would like to give a mention to before you book back in would be Simon Whitlock. Managed to turn MVG over, and that's become a bit of a habit now. He actually only got into the tournament on a default. I think Adi Lewis and Stephen Bunting pulled out with COVID. Whitlock and Dizwan came in, both won their first round matches. Whitlock went on a fantastic run. And yeah, another player that is like firmly on my radar for a good world championship, Simon Whitlock.
I've got I always mention about Simon Whitlock, and I've got it in my head that it's a stone cold fact. His darts are chiseled out of Allen keys, so the tips of his darts are not what you would buy in the shop or even online. They're actually Allen keys that he has chiseled down himself and literally made those darts. He
does tamper with his tips, yeah. Like he manually goes to work on them. I think Wayne Mardle's called him out a couple of times on the commentary because he does occasionally get bounce outs, and Mardle likes to sort of point out the fact that he's tampered with the darts. If he hadn't tampered with it, that wouldn't happen. But look, Whitlock's been around the block enough times. He knows what works for him. He's not quite as much of a tamperer as Peter Wright, but he's more than happy to have a go with his equipment. If it's not working, whatever he's done this year. He seems to have had a really good lockdown. He's come back completely rejuvenated. And it's great to watch. I mean, we'll get onto it, I'm sure, but that Players' Championship win over Van Gerwen was fantastic as well. He's just like raising his game to ridiculous levels, and it's great to see.
Well, he's beat Van Gerwen 3 times, I think, this year in TV tournaments, but then gone on to lose the next game. On this occasion, we're talking about the Grand Prix. That was against Big Dirk. And what I would say about Big Dirk as well is the story that went with it was quite a genuine feel-good. He was talking about aubergines in some weird interviews when I first saw him. I thought, what's going on here? It turns out he works at an aubergine farm back in Holland. And actually, the day, well, probably not the next day, but the 2 days after he was in Northampton, I think it was, for the Grand Prix, he was back at the aubergine farm factory, whatever you want to call it, working. And he says he's going to continue that. Quickly after the Grand Prix, we rolled straight into the World Cup. A tournament that's not every darts fan's cup of tea, and it probably wasn't mine 2 or 3 years ago, but it has grown on me in the last couple of years. My thinking going into the tournament was an extension really of the Grand Prix in terms of Van Gerwen. Gerwyn Price, not Van Gerwen. Gerwyn Price. Thought he was dialed in. He's the best player in the world at the time. I don't think there was much argument about that at that little, say, month period. So as a result, I backed Wales to win in and around 7-2, and they did. And Gerwyn Price again was pretty much at a canter until the latter stages where Johnny Clayton weighed in his part as well, which we'll come on to. So yeah, two winners in 2 tournaments makes me sound like I know what I'm doing on the betting front. It is all downhill from here, don't get me wrong. But yeah, just in terms of the World Cup, for those that don't know, doubles format. So there's two players in a team. The big boys always up there, the Dutch and the English. The Scots were the reigning champions, and that was the only disappointment of the tournament really for me, because last year's winners, Peter Wright and Gary Anderson, neither of them took part. I think Gary Anderson was and still is injured. I think Peter Wright took it off to manage his schedule kind of thing during these COVID times. So that was a disappointment. So the reigning champions, unfortunately, fielded basically a reserve team in John Henderson that we all know and love, and Thornton that's bang out of form and continues to be so. So, yeah, that was the setup of going into the World Cup. And how did it pan out?
Well, as you say, Wales, it was kind of a 3-way goal, wasn't it? I mean, people kind of thought it was between Wales, the Dutch and England. England fielded a team of Michael Smith and Rob Cross, who I must admit, didn't appeal to me when I saw that team
No.
selection. I know they went purely on rankings, but like Cross has been bang out of form for most of the year. Smith has like severe problems closing games out like 90% of the time. So it wasn't a team that inspired me with confidence, to be honest. I was kind of like you. I was leaning between Wales and the Netherlands. I thought there was some lively outsiders in there. I thought Germany had a really good chance. Thought Australia were a very interesting team. Whitlock and Damon Heta, who is someone we're going to be talking about a lot more, I think, in the coming months and years. Then you had some, the likes of Portugal with Big Jose, who's another man we're going to be discussing. Austria were the home team and quite well fancied with Mensah Suljovic, John Rodriguez. So there was depth there, but you always felt like providing Price kept to the standards he was and Clayton could give him sufficient backup, it was always going to be a Wales, a Wales strong chance and only the Netherlands really standing in their way. When Germany knocked out the Netherlands, that seemed to be the point where you thought Wales have got this, I must give credit to England. They kind of outran what I thought they would do. They did make the final. But what I have to say is that the general standard of performances was borderline atrocious. They were pretty dire against Lithuania in the opening round. Labanauskis and some guy from the pub in Lithuania. They scraped past them. They had a appalling time in the second round where Austria had them fully on the rack. Mensah Suljovic, Michael Smith managed to blow a 3-0 lead in a race to 4, which was pretty much standard, And then Rob Cross got turned over by Roby John Rodriguez, who hasn't done anything in the last ever. And then they went to a doubles game, 3-3 deciding leg. Austria threw an absolutely stinking leg and England scraped through, So how they got to that point was beyond me. To their credit, they put in a good performance to beat a decent Belgium side of Huybrechts and Vandenberg. Definitely one of the outsiders that I think a lot of people would have fancied at the prices. But, in the final, they were thoroughly found out by Wales. They were absolutely pumped. I think Price and Clayton both averaged 10 more points than their opponent in both singles games, and then they comfortably dispatched them in the pairs. So very impressed with Wales. Wouldn't read too much into the Netherlands loss. Michael van Gerwen was actually going to pull out with injury on the morning of the Germany game. As it was, he played. They forced it to a pairs decider and lost. Noppert isn't really that quality of player. He's a solid second player, but if you were chucking Van Gerwen in with, say, a Van Barneveld a few years ago, that's like an irrepressible force at that level. But yeah, look, it was a good performance by Wales. There was some very decent performances from the up-and-coming nations. A tournament I thoroughly enjoy. Would quite like to see the format revised.
Yeah.
I really do think that it should be exclusively pairs or certainly pairs led. I don't like this thing of leading with the 2 singles matches, because if you're a lesser nation and your big boy gets beat, let's say Jose de Sousa for Portugal or Devon Peterson for South Africa, once they've been beaten, you're out. You're not even going to get to the pairs game because your second player is, pulled out of a working man's club. So it's just, if you lead with that pairs game or make the pairs game longer, let's say Portugal versus England, first to 10 legs pairs. If Jose de Sousa turns up and averages 106, they've got a real chance of turning them over, Whereas if Jose's mate averages 74, you're going home, So I think they could have a look at that, the PDC. But I thoroughly enjoyed the tournament.
Yeah, no, I agreed with you in terms of England. That filled me with no confidence whatsoever. It's funny, Michael Smith really, in this first time we mentioned him, but from the 3 or 4 tournaments we're going to talk about, it's a bit of a transformation for Michael Smith as an individual. I mean, we all know that he's often come up short in the finals and been absolutely battered in a few finals and hasn't quite got over the line. We don't need to go over that one again, but this was something that kind of continued into this tournament. Rob Cross was bang out of form, and it didn't feel as with confidence, because at the time I think it was the Dutch were about 9-4, and then Wales and England were there at 7-2 apiece. And yeah, England managed to make the final, but like you say, brushed aside and can count themselves quite lucky to get there. But yeah, thoroughly agree on the format in terms of, you know, these nations that have got one big player and someone from the local pub, as you say, the likes this year of Portugal, Austria in previous years, Australia possibly in previous years. There's been, you know, who've got a very good lead player, but it's not backed up elsewhere. I think
apart from when Paul Nicholson decided he was Australian for a few years, you know.
Yeah, and then that was one of the famous clips
and
where he
cried
on
stage.
Yeah. So, but I mean, back in the day, this tournament was just viewed by people like me as just a two or three horse race, because back in the day we had Phil Taylor and A.D. Lewis, who were winning world titles between them at the time, and then Van Barneveld and Van Gerwen on the other side. It was, you know, sometimes it was a two horse race. Then the Scots came into it in recent years. So, but yeah, like you say, you just get to see the depth. And, you know, we'll be talking a lot about Jose de Sousa. And, you know, I mean, who would have thought 10 years ago you're going to tell me that a Portuguese darts player is going to win a major title in the PDC? I mean, it's mad. But we'll come on to that. So, yeah, that was the World Cup. After that came the Winter Series. So you will know better than me here. But, yeah, the Winter Series was 5 ranking events back to back. Wasn't on terrestrial TV or subscription TV, but was on PDC TV online.
Great value product, by the way. Just give it a plug.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's $5.99 a month for ongoing subscribers.
Great value.
People like me, I think I paid for the first time. It was dead easy to do. I paid $1.99 a day, and I think I had it for 2 days. And you know, there's 128 players whittled down to 1 in straight knockout, 5 days running. And because the 5 days were crammed back to back, and it was the season's been crammed as well, there was a lot of, well, all of the big boys were turning up, really going for it, because Grand Slam qualification was definitely on the line and changed right up until I think actually the last game on the Saturday, and World Championship points. Although it wasn't decided that week for many players, it certainly was catapulting some of them into the World Championship qualification agenda. So that was good. Michael Smith took the first 2 days, so he ended a 2-year wait for any PDC ranking title. Like I say, this wasn't on TV, so he still got that hurdle to come to get over in terms of TV event. But yeah, he won his first PDC ranking event in 2 years, and then the next day turned up and did it again. So fair play for Michael Smith for doing that. And that's when I think from that day, to me, Michael Smith has changed as a player. Obviously, confidence breeds more confidence, but you know, from that day, and I think he's been more confident on the doubles, carried himself as a more confident player. Totally different to what I saw in the World Cup, to be honest with you, where, like we say, their form throughout was shaky. Then they got absolutely dusted in the final as soon as they come up against anyone that was going to answer back, kind of thing. So yeah, well done to Bully Boy there. You know, I've been a critic of him, and you know, it's well documented. He's been struggling to get over the line, but yeah, I genuinely think I've seen a difference there. Also at the Winter Series, Jose de Sousa, who we'll talk about at length. He made 2 finals, got beat in 2 finals, I think. Gerwin Price won it on the Thursday, and then said that he was going home on the Friday, was going to miss the Friday and come back on the Saturday. He didn't come back at all, to be fair to him. And then on the final day, Joe Cullen won on the final day. I think so. All the games are 1st to 6, except for the final. Is that right?
Yeah, that's it.
So, and Joe Cullen was 4 or 5-0 down in the opening round, came back to win. I think it was against Justin
Pipe. It was 5-0 down.
It was 5-0 down to Justin Pipe. Came back to win that, and then ended up winning the old tournament on day 5. That was quite remarkable. But yeah, I'll let you fill in.
Yeah, well, just obviously, as you say, this isn't a tournament that is as exposed to the general public as the other ones. You know, there's no TV coverage on ITV or Sky. It's purely PDC. But one thing I would say, the Players' Championship and the level of the floor events is just so good now. You know, if you enjoy the dart on the TV, get yourself a PDC subscription and enjoy this, because the quality and the depth of quality is just fantastic. You got players that you may never have heard of coming in and averaging over 100, beating the big boys, you know. And one thing I would say as well, I think this transition period without any fans has made it easier for the players who've got form on the floor to come onto the big stage. Your Dirk van Dijvenboders, you know, he's come in, he's got a bit of form on the floor, and suddenly he's playing in majors without a crowd. Now, whether he'll be able to produce these performances in that crowd environment will be interesting. Nothing to say that he won't. In fact, some players seem to thrive off a crowd. I've been particularly impressed with Dimitri Vandenberg's form, given he's normally a big stage crowd player, and he's managed to transfer that. But that's another matter that we can come on to, But yeah, these tournaments just give you a great platform, and really good to see the quality that is coming through. Just to run through them, obviously, Michael Smith, as you say, getting his a much-needed victory in the first of the 5 events. I thought he was very impressive, but he did have Jermaine Watamina in the final. And if you could pick a player to play in the final, it probably would be Jermaine Watamina, because he's very erratic. When he's good, he's very good, but he can go from hitting a 9-dart leg to throwing a 25-dart leg the next one, And I just kind of thought, when I saw Smith and Watamina getting through to the final, I thought, Michael Smith, if you can't win this final, you're going to have it's going to really get him down if he can't get over the line. I think Watamina missed the dart to make it 6-all and ended up losing it. So, fair play to Smith. And as you say, coming back and winning it the next day. And the way he won it the next day was even more impressive than the first one. And to me, that just shows that the problem with Michael Smith is in his head. Because once he got that first win, the second one literally fell onto his lap. And he was averaging, I think he had averaged 106 when he beat Damon Heta. He averaged 109 when he beat Gabriel Clemens. And then he smashed, he beat Jose de Souza in a fantastic final, averaging 107. So, I mean, the quality of his play was outstanding. And he just looked unbeatable across those 2 days. He really did. Worth mentioning on that second day, we had a 9-darter from Andy Hamilton, who I thought fell off the face of the earth and then banged in a 9-darter. Great to see the hammer back.
I think I text you that day saying Andy Hamilton doing bits on the tour with a 9-darter, and I was like, wow, yeah,
phenomenal. I actually thought he had vanished off the face of the earth. So he looks
like
he's looking
BDO at one stage.
Yeah, he's looking a little bit trimmer, the hammer, as well. And so's Big John Henderson, by the way. Yeah,
AD Lewis is as well. A few of them are.
Not so Big John Henderson now, which is a real disappointment.
Yeah, disappointment. He had his shirt tucked in and everything at the weekend. But I mean,
from a health perspective, fantastic. But from a fan's perspective, devastating.
I want to see a big 20-stone Henderson rocking all over the world.
You've got to wonder, how has that affected the Rock? Losing them 2-3 stone. Is he still rocking with the same momentum? That's what I want to know.
Well, he got brushed aside the other day. So.
He did, yeah. He got pumped by a Gerwin Price. I don't know. It remains to be seen whether the Rock has been altered in the weight loss, but So Michael Smith, obviously fantastic. Gerwin Price winning the third of the 5 events was pretty routine. This is the point where we start to notice a pattern with Damon Heta, the Australian. Got through to the quarters on day 2, the semis on day 3. I think he made the quarters again after that. When you start seeing the same name popping up all the time, you think, well, who's this fella, And anyone who's been watching the tour this year will have noticed Heta making regular appearances in the latter stages of tournaments. Australian, following in the footsteps of Simon Whitlock. Very capable performer, very steady, solid player, always averaging around 98, 99. If you have a bad day, he will beat you. He's had some very good runs in recent events. He's definitely a player to keep on your radar, although I noticed that the markets have very much taken notice of him now. I think he's as short as 33, 40 to 1 for the World Championship.
Well, I saw his name popping up, and I backed him at 190 on some Ladbrokes boost. And he's a lot shorter now, yeah.
He deserves to be, though. He's not a player that anyone will relish facing. But it may
he should have been in the semi-final at the weekend. Just gone. I mean, he was walloping Mervyn King 7-2 up or 7-3 up and lost. But anyway, we'll come on to that.
He was. And the Grand Slam as well. He lost a very good quarterfinal to James Wade. But as you say, can come on to that. Day 4, Snakebite won. The one thing I took away from day 4 was Adrian Lewis got himself to a semi-final, playing extremely well, and went on to make the quarters in day 5 as well. So is A.D. Lewis getting back to somewhere near his best? The problem A.D. Lewis has got is his ranking has slipped. So he's having, he's going to get tough draws in these tournaments because he's not got that high ranking that he used to have, and you can't underestimate that. The quality in the field now. If you're not in the top 16 players and you're getting drawn against one of these big boys, it's going to be hard work to ever make it to the latter stages of a tournament. You're going to have to average over 100. It's not like the Phil Taylor days. No disrespect to Phil Taylor, but if you weren't Phil Taylor or Raymond van Barneveld, and you knew you could get up to world number 3, world number 4, and have a full quarter of these draws without having to face Taylor or Barney. So
that was the days of Colin Lloyd, Wes Newton, Painter used to get high rankings sometimes. Mardle, yes, them kind of guys.
I don't want to badmouth that generation because all sports, especially sports in their early stages, have natural progression where things, the standard goes up quite considerably, quite quickly, and it can make the old footage look very dated and poor quality. But really, they were the standard bearers. They were the torch bearers for darts. They've made it what it is. So I don't want to discredit them. But what I will say is you're not getting them easy draws anymore. Round 1 of any major TV championship, you have got a really good player standing opposite you. There's no one that goes, oh, I've got quite an easy draw. Sometimes you look at Van Gerwen and think he's got an easy draw, but that's because he's Van Gerwen and he's going to average about 110, So I really do think A.D. Lewis, he needs to string 3 or 4 good tournaments together and get back in that top 16, let them higher ranks. Then he can work his way back to the top of the game. He's got all the ability. In the world. As
I've always said about A.D. Lewis, darts is a better place when A.D. Lewis is playing well because he brings a bit of needle, he can whack 180s, a bit of controversy.
We saw him hit a 9 darter, didn't we?
We was there at Liverpool, and actually, I was just watching the other day the Grand Slam game between Taylor and Lewis from I think it was like 2012. Where it was just raining 180s. That was the record that Whitlock beat for 180s. And I watched that the other day, and that's when Lewis was at his best. But because Lewis won his 2 world titles so early in his life, he was still in his 20s, I believe, because there's another. Lewis could play. You can play darts till you're 50 now. Mervyn King, for example, at the weekend. It just seems that the A.D. Lewis he's now operating at a level a long way behind from where he was. And you've got to give credit to him, really, for still chipping away. And, this was a guy who's been in the Premier League more than most. And,
let's not forget, he's had his troubles as well. Let's remember his kickoffs on the floor events and starting on referees, starting on players. He's had all kinds of carry on away from darts. He's not had it easy, and like you say, he's still there. He still wants to earn his way. He still thinks he can beat these players, and it's good to see him putting some results together. I really hope he can get himself back up to the top.
But like you say, he's going to have himself a tough draw.
It's hard. Once you slip down, it is a hard old sport to get back up to the top in now. Just a final touch on them Winter Series events. 5th event, as you say, won by Joe Cullen. He benefited from a few strange results. Like you said, Price having the day off. MVG got knocked out by Callan Ridds very early. That's bound to encourage the field when you see MVG knocked out round 1, Price, not playing. You're immediately thinking this is a real chance. I think the semi-final lineup had Cullen, Ratajski, who he played in the final, very capable player, big fan. But the other semi-finalists, Andy Bolton and Kim Hybrex. I mean, it wasn't, if you knocked that tournament on late, you'd be wondering whether you were watching round 1 or the semis, It was strange. But what I would say for Joe Cullen, like you say, 5-0 down to Justin Pipe in that first match, to come back, win that 6-5. And then he was fantastic in the final against Ratajski. And Ratajski played very well as well. 2 players that you always feel are capable of making big finals if they can just put a run together. They can beat anyone on their day, but can they do it consistently over a week? Joe Cullen, there's no other player that I have seen have so many unfortunate exits on TV matches. He always seems to hit the wrong double or have a bounce out or someone hits a 9 darter against him. You do really feel like he's due some luck in one of these big TV events, and maybe it'll be this year at the Ali Pali.
Well, that brings us nicely onto the Grand Slam because, there was a wider backdrop, but Joe Cullen was on the wrong end of something. I could hardly even describe what happened.
I think we were speaking at the time, weren't we? Just saying how bonkers it was.
I just like so. So the Grand Slam is a group format, four guys or four players in each group, and it often goes down to leg difference. So Joe Cullen needed to win 4 legs in a game against Van Gerwen, where the winner, to win the game, you need 5 legs. So he only needed 4 legs. And yeah, Joe Cullen is on throw. He's already got three legs on the board on throw. Only needs to win 1 more leg. And yeah, he just has a complete meltdown. I think, as I remember it, MVG was a mile back on 200 and odd. And yeah, Cullen tried to. I think he had 18 left, and he tried to split to leave himself 16 when he came back. So with his last start, went for a single 2, hit a double 2, and so he came back to the board with 14 required.
And the problem was Van Gerwen was still not on a finish at this point.
Van Gerwen was on 160 something. So yeah. Cullen should have looked, because Van Gerwen left himself a bogey, which you wouldn't see often from players like Van Gerwen. So I think Cullen's return to the board on 14, thinking that Van Gerwen can finish, but he could not. So Cullen still had 6 darts, and then yeah, instead of splitting the 7, which was his modus operandi before, to split 18, now he won't split 14, and he's had 2 darts outside the board, and then he's just gone into the single 7, and then it's just a mess.
I felt sick
as
soon as he left 14.
He wanted the ground to swallow him.
As soon as he left 14, I felt sick, because I am someone who's watched Joe Cullen implode several times, and he played brilliantly in that match, hadn't he? To get it seemed like a bit of a long shot to get the 4 legs off MVG, who was playing very well, and he was in like full control, as you say, hundreds and hundreds of points ahead in the leg. When he leaves this 14, and Van Gerwen, on 1-6 whatever, well, he got down to 1-6 something. So you're still thinking you've got bags of time here. Don't panic.
He got 6 darts at 14.
6 darts at 14, right? As you say, he when he was on 18, he was trying to split for double 8. So comes to the board of this 14, you're thinking, right, 6, double 4, surely. Goes straight at this double 7 and goes outside.
Twice.
And I'm thinking, right. Goes outside again. I think, right, this was a really interesting choice. And then the 3rd dart is just absolutely criminal. It's gone inside the double 7. And I just had my head in my hands. Even with Van Gerwen on 162 or whatever, I thought he's blown it. His head has completely fell off.
Because at that point, where he's walked away from the board with 7 on his score, he still had another 3 darts.
Yeah.
But me and you were sitting there thinking, this is going west.
Yeah, because it's happened to him before so many times. So you start thinking, I've done it again. How have I done this? And he's also having to deal with these thoughts of, why didn't I split? Why have I just gone for that 7? I should have split it. I meant to split it. And I guess what you have to put into perspective, we're watching these guys on TV saying, what you're doing. They're in the moment. It's very high pressure. He probably backs himself to hit double 7. He probably hits it all day in practice, but the logical call is to split it. He split the 9. He should have split the 7. He knows he should have split the 7. He knows he's messed up. Like you say, he's still got 3 in hand. He's got at least 2 at a double. The situation is very retrievable if he can just compose himself. But because it's Joe Cullen, because it's happened to him before, because the world seems to be against him, Van Gerwen naturally puts a decent setup in. He panics and he hits the 3. He goes inside the 2, inside the 1. Next thing
nowhere near the double 1.
No, it was really, really hard to watch. And next thing you know, he's out. And the poor lad looked like he'd been hit by a bus. He just completely. I really, really felt sorry for him. I've seen him do it a few times, and not nice to watch, but also quite funny in a sadistic way,
But then Van Gerwen's there after the game. He's speaking to the ref, and he was saying, "Does that mean he's out?" And even Van Gerwen's like that. Anyway, enough on that. So we was So the Grand Slam came around quickly. It was originally, in my head, the tournament where the BDO crossed the PDC, but to be honest with you, the quality is not there in the BDO.
BDO is dead now, isn't it?
Yeah, there was two female competitors as well. Yeah, so the group stage, and I was going into it having already backed Price to win the Worlds, I think 3 times at that point. Personally, I was looking for the reigning champion of the Grand Slam to come into this tournament and really push forward, and hopefully his price be even shorter than the one I was on at. That didn't happen to me. Gerwyn Price didn't look switched on all week to me. As you'd said previously, he talked about going home, not for this particular tournament, but for previous. He did so at the Winter Series, missed the last 2 days. He never looked at the races to me. He played the Japanese lady first. Should have lost that game. She had 3 at double 10 to win the match. And all 3 were unlucky.
Can I just give her some credit there, Miro Suzuki? It was a sensational performance. It was not a case of Price playing badly. She played really, really well, and I think that performance may have shook Price.
Yeah. And then the next day, Price comes back, plays Clayton. It's his buddy from Wales that just won the World Cup. He won that game, but didn't really look switched on. And then I think he went out quite tamely to Aspinall. So I was disappointed in Gerwyn Price there, but this was away from Mr. Price, who I talk a lot about. This was the return to form, if you like, of MVG, in my mind anyway. So what must be highlighted really is that MVG at this stage was using his old darts. So at the turn of the year, MVG, they said it was pre-planned. It looked a bit coincidental to me, given he'd just lost the final, got battered in the final by Snakebite Right. But yeah, he's gone with the new dart supplier. The name of the company eludes me. But yeah, and that's no coincidence that his form dipped, which is excellent standards. Dipped in the first half of this 2020. He did win the UK Open. Don't get me wrong, but he's been going out early in the tour. He had that injury at the World Cup. He's looked more beatable than ever, and that was reflected in the markets because he was going off at prices bigger than he's ever been going off before. So it wasn't a coincidence. But in the Grand Slam, he was back to his old darts. He came across Simon Whitlock in the quarterfinal, a game we've already mentioned. Whitlock broke the record for 180s. Van Gerwen played excellent. It was a fantastic game. It was awesome. I think that was on a Sunday night. Actually, the format was slightly different with the Grand Slam this year, but yeah, it was brilliant. I think Whitlock hit 3180s or something absolutely ridiculous like that. It was crazy. So yeah, that was a signal to me that Van Gerwen was back to some sort of form. But this tournament was all about 2 players for me, and I know you'll cover them well: Jose de Souza and Dimitri Van den Berg.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with what you said on Van Gerwen. I must say, I've been a big. I don't think you can ever be a critic of Van Gerwen because he's just sensational. He's made darts what it is. And although he won't replicate Phil Taylor's world titles, he certainly has the stature of Phil Taylor within the game for me of the modern era. He is the Phil Taylor of the modern era. He's the face of darts. And he's still young. People forget how young he is. He's going to be around for another 20 years, Van Gerwen, and he's very determined. He's playing in a completely different sphere of darts to Taylor, it's not possible to win double figures world titles in this generation. There's too many good players. But anyway, I'm getting away from the point. Van Gerwen showed some very promising form in the group stage. He translated it into the knockouts, and he lost absolutely nothing in defeat to Whitlock. Simon Whitlock was playing the mind games beforehand, saying, I've got his number, I know how to beat him, this and that. Not sure anyone really believed that he would be able to beat him for a 3rd time this year on telly, but sure enough, he did. He rose to the occasion. Van Gerwen always seemed to be in command of the match until late in the piece, when Whitlock his relentless scoring seemed to finally be getting through to Van Gerwen. What I always look for in defeats is whether I think the player has thrown it away or whether they've just been outplayed. I think that's always a really good way to start analysing a match. Has the person lost it, or have they just been beaten by a better player? I don't think Van Gerwen lost it. I think he was beaten by a player who took his chances at the right time. And in the last leg, Van Gerwen threw an excellent leg to leave himself. He ended up missing 5 match darts. But what I would say is the 2 he missed at 4-4 on the original visit to win the match were both excellently thrown darts. There is such a difference between a poor match start and a good match start, even if they miss. Van Gogh in it, 2 at double 4, well thrown, perfect motion on the wire. In another 9 times out of 10, one of them goes in and everyone says, well done, MVG. MVG wins the tournament and he's probably 6-4 for the Worlds because he's on top again, So it's the fine margins of darts. It is worth saying that his next 3 match starts at 4s, 2s, and 1 were nerves, genuine nerves. He realised that if he missed, he was going to get beat. He is human. He's going to have these moments. But yeah, brilliant from Whitlock. As you were saying, the 2 takeaways from this tournament, aside from that particular pair, would be Jose de Souza, our eventual winner, and Dimitri van den Berg. I'll start on Dimitri, who didn't win, but was phenomenal. He broke the average record for the tournament, which I believe was Phil Taylor's. Yep. So it shows how long that had stood. With Dimitri, he's a player I've followed, as you well know, for a long time. I was banging the Dimitri drum when he was 1,500 to 1 to win the Worlds and missed 3 darts at double 6 against Rob Cross,
the eventual champion.
Don't want to go into that anyway. Dimitri has won TV titles now. He is very much on the radar of everybody, but I still think he probably doesn't get the respect he deserves in terms of his level of performance. This was sensational in the group stage. He couldn't miss the treble 20. He was taking out 3-figure outs like they were, single dart finishes. He looked in a completely different headspace to where he'd been at the World Cup with Kim Huybrechts, where he was sort of dicking around on the stage, having a laugh. And he just didn't look fully focused, and I was reading a little bit. There were suggestions that Huybrechts had maybe had a word with him about his attitude after the World Cup. I don't know what he said to him, but he seems to have done the trick because he's back to his miserable self. It doesn't show a flicker of emotion. Looks like he's having some kind of mental breakdown every time he approaches the hockey.
Looks down, doesn't he, like that?
Does his deep breathing, does his whole yoga, to be honest, it looks ridiculous, but hey, it's working for him. It's been really, really impressive. Like you say, very, very good in this tournament. I think he looked like the most likely winner at one stage, but obviously eventually, I think it was Wade that knocked him out, wasn't it?
Yeah, and, Wade just grinded him down.
Credit to Wade, who by the way also deserves a mention. Got to the final. Some very efficient performances from Wade. I know it's a bit cliche to say that he's he'll take you down, he'll just grind you down, but he does. He does grind you down. He doesn't bang you off the board with 180s. He just hangs around. He wins legs that he shouldn't win. If you miss 2 at double 18, he'll come in and take out 110. And it's just like those kind of things. Once it happens 2 or 3 times in a match, the other player thinks, I should be like 5 or 6 legs up here and I'm level, what's going on? And that's what he did to Dimitri. But Van den Berg for the World Championship, if you are coming in as a complete, novice to darts and you want someone who's going to give you, who is capable of mixing it at the top, and there's still a bit of juice in the price, you could do a lot worse than Dimitri van den Berg. He's very capable, very capable. And the eventual winner, what can I say about Jose de Souza? Is he the most lovable man to ever play darts? Quite possibly. Him and John Henderson. He hits 180s for fun. Yeah, I'd put Big John in there. Yeah, but he hits 180s for fun. And Merv King. He hits 180s for fun. He miscounts for fun. He makes as many mistakes as he does brilliant things, no matter what has happened in his mini session, he gives a thumb up and a big smile to the camera every time he goes off the stage. He looks like a man, to be frank, who has just left his job to play darts. And that is effectively what he's doing. In fact, he's still in his job technically. I mean, he needs to leave immediately, but he's a sensational player, and he's been threatening to do this all year, and he's gone and done it at the Grand Slam. You look at the players he beat as well, like over long games. The way that he just brushed aside, he kept Wade at arm's length all the way through the final. Like, to do that to James Wade in form is
Beat an
very, very
on-form Michael
impressive.
Smith as well.
He did beat Michael Smith. He beat Dimitri Vandenberg, as we said, who was banging form. No, sorry, that was Wade. But the players that Jose beat throughout the whole tournament, and let's remember, he only got through his group in second. Yep. So he did very well just to get out of the groups, never mind win the thing. But who knows? The sky's the limit for Jose now.
Well, like you say, the likability factor. This is not a young person. Like, Jose de Sousa is well into his 40s. He has been in and around the tour. He's even been to the Worlds, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. But yeah, Portuguese, which isn't the most, notorious darting nation. And yeah, but he has been absolutely on fire recently. He really genuinely has. And there will be some people out there that have got juicy prices on de Sousa to win the Worlds this year. Similar-ish, if you like, to the guys who had big prices on Rob Cross. Me and you were on Dimitri all them years ago. But I still think there's juice in his price now. And normally, if I've missed the boat, betting-wise, it puts me right off. But I still think, and we'll come on to it, I think there's some juice in the de Sousa price at 18-1. So, yeah, that was the Grand Slam. Moving on to the Players' Championships final, which is, like, as we touched on earlier, is a bit of a culmination of the series events that go on normally on the floor, like the Winter Series. It's dead simple. The top 64 go on to the Players' Championship final. It is on TV. This one's on ITV. I think one year it might have been on BBC, but I could be wrong there. That might be the Champions League. Yeah. So yeah, the top 64 and the draws. The draw is as you would imagine. One plays 64, two plays 63. Really straightforward. The first two rounds are first to 6 legs, as it is on the standard tour, and that's where you get the potential for a lot of early upsets. So guys that had momentum from previous tournaments like the Grand Slam going into the Players' Championships, the likes of Dimitri Vandenberg, who we've mentioned, Aspinall, who's been solid on big TV events for some time now, Devon Peterson went pretty well in the Grand Slam, has been talked about. He's a change player this year, Devon Peterson. James Wade made the final of the Grand Slam. Made the final of the Grand Slam. Then 4 players went out in the first round of the Players' Championships. And from a betting point of view, looking ahead to the Worlds, you and I have spoken that Dimitri, on the form of the Grand Slam, and he's won a major this year, Dimitri Vandenberg. So he's had a good year, but it culminated in the Grand Slam where he was excellent without even making the final or obviously not winning it. We thought Dimitri Vandenberg's price should be, could well go off 12-1 for the Worlds. And I think that still remains the case. But because he's gone out early in the most recent TV event, alongside Aspinall, Peterson and Wade, there could be more juice in the price now, looking forward to the Worlds. But that's it. That's the players who went out early. The story goes that I've, again, looking at Gerwyn Price, as I have been, I thought he was okay in this tournament. He upped his game against Van Gerwen in the semi-final, got beat. Mervyn King was a revelation, as he threatens to do. Such a character, and as time gone on, we fell in love with him. But so Mervyn King made it all the way to the final. He was a 250-1 shot. Van Gerwen and Gerwyn Price were pretty much joint favourites going into the tournament. Van Gerwen, again playing with them old darts, looked at as close as I've seen him back to his best for some time, and took the tournament.
Yeah, it's a very interesting tournament. As you say, these 6 legs, first to 6 legs, there's so much potential for an upset. Like, even the players that got through, some of them were run very, very close in their early rounds. You're quite right in what you say about these players' prices moving incorrectly. I've always thought that markets sometimes move on the silliest things. Devon Peterson lost in the first round of this tournament. Now, Devon Peterson averaged 102 and got beat. Devon Peterson didn't perform shocking, and suddenly all the things of the last few months have gone out the window. He played Luke Humphries. Luke Humphries played very well. It was a tight match. Humphries took his chances. Over 6 legs, anyone who is decent at darts can win against anyone else if they hit the right scores at the right time. So you got to remember, in the Worlds, we do have a similar situation in the Worlds where the first couple of rounds are very low scoring, and that you always feel that's the best chance for someone to knock Van Gerwen out, knock Price out, these early rounds. We've seen it in the past. But just because somebody goes out in an early round of a tournament, that does not make them any less likely to perform well in the next tournament. So I would still be looking at Peterson. I'd still be looking at Vandenberg. James Wade went out to Neil Zonneveld. Has he lost anything in that defeat? No. Credit to Zonneveld. He played very well.
And to be fair, what should be mentioned about this Players' Championship, the bubble, if you like, continued from the Grand Slam through to the Players' Championship finals. It was at the same venue. And this year, because of COVID, rather than finishing on a Sunday, the Grand Slam, I think, finished on the Monday. Or was it even might have even been the Tuesday.
I think it was the Tuesday, yeah.
Tuesday, semi-finals Monday. So James Wade has played Tuesday, gone all the way to the final, was disappointed with his final performance, although I thought it was perfectly acceptable against a form player. And then he's backing up only 2 or 3 days later in a game to 6 legs
against a relative nobody.
Yeah, so
is it going to be motivated?
You can forgive things like that.
Definitely, and I think there's definitely a case of some of these bigger players are looking at the World Championships now. They've got one eye on the Worlds. They're not really asked about the Players' Championship. If you've had a good run in the Grand Slam, you just want the Worlds to be tomorrow, don't you? You're feeling good in your game. That's what you want. You've waited all year for. Players' Championship, it's a nice one to get your eye in if you haven't been playing well. And there were some players that put good runs together that will stand them in good stead. None more so than Mervyn King, who absolutely rolled back the years, just refused to.
Well, he rolls his darts as well in his hand, doesn't he?
Just refused to be beaten. It was great to watch. I didn't realise quite how much Mervyn King. I would say splits opinion. I just think he's hated. I think 99% of people hate Merv King. I adore him. I'm in love with Mervyn King. When that final against MVG, I was just thinking, please play well, Merv, because if he plays well, the facial reactions are going to be going. He's going to be kicking off. He's going to be moaning. He's going to be swearing.
There was a lot of head shaking.
You've got no crowd in, so the commentators are apologising for his language every 5 minutes. He's glaring Van Gerwen. Van Gerwen gives it the big one.
He's doing it even more, yeah.
Van Gerwen hits a 160 in a massive leg in the final. Gives it a come on down the camera. Merv King stares him out for about 10 seconds. Oh, sensational. Even when he's won the title, you've got a gif of Merv King shaking his head in the background for him celebrating winning the title. But Merv King, let's give him some credit here. He's averaged 100 to beat Damon Heta, and he was well behind in that match. 7-2?
7-2 or 7-3. Well, I had Damon Heta at 40-1. He was my only remaining stab at the competition. I picked 4, and I tweeted I wouldn't be happier to lose money if I had to than it to be against Mervyn King. But when it actually happened, and Heta was 7-3 up, and Heta was about 1-20 on the exchange to win the game, and then King came back and beat him, and I saw my 40-1 go down the drain. I was fuming.
Merv's just gone on one, hasn't he, for 9 legs? Yeah, that was fair play. But yeah, I mean, away from Merv King, other ones worth a mention, I think. Dirk van Dijvenbode had played very well here again. Averaged 103 in his loss to MVG. And he beat Willie O'Connor, who averaged 102 against him, and he still beat him. So he's definitely looks like he can keep this form up. I wouldn't want to be playing Dirk van Dijvenbode anytime soon. Joe Cullen had another good run. Naturally lost in the last leg to go in Price. It's just Joe Cullen doing Joe Cullen things, I'm afraid. Another player that Damon Heta, as we mentioned, unlucky to go out to Merv King. He looked very, very solid until losing that match. And Michael Smith.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned him.
Yeah, deserves a mention. I've been a Michael Smith basher for some time, but you quite rightly said there seems to have been a shift since he won them back-to-back Winter Series.
Well, and he beat Jose de Souza, who he'd previously lost to in the similar stage of the Grand Slam. Yeah.
He laid that ghost to rest because Jose, they both played very well in that Grand Slam game. Jose got the better of him. Mike Smith draws him again. He could easily have thought, I'm going to go down again. This is the man in form, man everyone's talking about. Jose averaged 102, 103. Didn't play badly, and Smith still beat him. So credit to him. He got beat by Snake, which, you can't legislate for Peter Wright sometimes. He's either going to turn up and average 110, or I think, was it in that last tournament, he averaged something like, against Merv King, he averaged about 78 or something.
Oh, it's shocking.
It was absolutely appalling. And the previous game, he'd averaged over 100.
Yeah, I think in the third round, Snakebite used 3 different setups of darts, not different sets, not as in the barrel was the same, but I think he was changing flights, he was changing stems. It just cannot be relied on.
And this is a world champion we're talking about, you know.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, we'll go on to the World Championships. But I think what we're going to do, folks, is if you've made it to 1 hour and 11 minutes, congratulations, you've done well. And so yeah, we've looked back on the major tournaments and ongoings that have happened, post lockdown, if you like. We've covered virtually every player worth covering. So yeah, I think what we're going to do is we're going to wrap it up there. Hopefully for the 2 or 3 people that have made it this far. Cheers, Mum. And then we'll be back on. I think the draw for the World Championships is tomorrow. That would be Wednesday, the 2nd of December. So we're going to kind of review the draw, and then we're going to come back and do a look forward to the World Championships and who we fancy, the prices. Not the Gerwin prices, the betting prices, the draw, how we see it going, what we're betting on. So yeah, hopefully that we can get that sorted. You've got the lovely background there, Pie Man. I think it's as I said at the start, anything could have happened. And yeah, it's gone an hour and 12 minutes of just
got longer than I
darts.
anticipated. But so, I hopefully somebody finds it like mildly interesting. If not, I believe there's a thing called ASMR, which helps people go to sleep. So maybe that could be of use,
Yeah.
But
well, yeah, in typical Joe Cullen form, I mean, we're only odds against for this recording to make it onto YouTube at any stage in the next, fortnight. So
yeah, there's a long way to go. We're currently on the 777. We've still got to split it and finish it, haven't we?
Yeah, there's a long way to go. So yeah, I'm hopefully going to try and finish this recording. And I've got a feeling though that because I've recorded it, when it goes onto YouTube, if it does, we're going to see predominantly your face and me just in the corner, which is excellent because I've got a face for radio. So you're the face of the Pie and Smith Productions is naturally going to be you. So that's excellent.
Well, on my screen, I don't know if you know how Microsoft Teams works, but I've actually got your face.
Oh, I've not got.
So I'm thinking on the final production, it might flick between the faces and it'd be an ideal balance. But we're in uncharted waters here, so we're just going to have to go with whatever happens, aren't we?
Yeah, we certainly are. So I'm going to press stop recording. So if you've made it this far, thank you very much.